Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Roberto Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the GFCC. We're here today to launch a new book, Leading Through the Chasm and Into the Future Economy. It's a pleasure to have all of you here today. We're launching this book that comes out of the work that we did in 2020. I think that we need to wait a bit here. They're telling me for the stream to go to different platforms. So we'll probably let know in 1 or 2 minutes when we should get started. Okay, we are live. So thank you so much for being here today. Welcome or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Roberto Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the GFCC, the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. We are here today to launch a new book, Leading Through the Chasm and Into the Future Economy. And this is something that comes out of the work that we did in 2020. And I am very delighted to have here with me today my president, Deborah Wentz-Smith. We will be talking a bit about the book. Also, we'll be pulling questions from you. I know that some authors are here today with us. Deborah, good morning. I know it's early morning on your end. Great to have you here. Deborah, just to get it started, we'll have a chance to talk about the book. But the key theme here, leading through the chasm. Why leadership? Why? So maybe we could get started with your take on leadership, Deborah.
Well, thank you, Roberto, and let me, on behalf of the GFCC, also welcome all of our colleagues and participants who are with us today. And I know Roberto is going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are with this fantastic compilation of really thought leadership around the crisis that we lived through last year, that we're still living through, and the response and commitment and collaboration and creativity that has emerged during the COVID-19 crisis that really has upended our world and has put us now in a position to really not just think about, but actively engaging in shaping, building, and most importantly, designing a new, innovative, resilient, and sustainable future for all our citizens and our nations. And at the heart of this reality really is leadership, because at the end of the day, without leadership, and I want to speak about leadership very broadly, we don't have the capacity to design and to bring people together, and very importantly, to act. And action is really the name of the game if human beings are going to accept and deal and manage and create change that improves their lives, the lives of their families, their communities, the companies and businesses in which they work, and of course, their nations at large. So I think one of the things, Roberto, that was very powerful in our series of discussions, and I know you're going to recognize the tremendous group of leaders from around the world, and they're all leaders who contributed to our series of discussions that has led to this fabulous compendium of their views and insights, is that leadership is really dealing at the very highest level with uncertainty. And of course, uncertainty was what we were all faced a little over a year ago when the pandemic, burst forth into the world and really shattered our existences as we knew it. So having the capacity as individuals to, one, accept uncertainty, to understand it using facts and knowledge, and being able to communicate and collaborate to get this sense of what is the uncertainty. But then, very importantly, in this environment of complexity, leaders have to really understand that it's their job to, yes, set a tone, but to create the safe spaces and in the environment for collaboration and co-creation that enables people in their community to act together. So I would say, some overarching thoughts about leadership in a time of uncertainty, a time with already unbelievable accelerating change in every dimension of life. And then, of course, the reality that how we acted and worked and came together in the past could not get us through the chasm to the future. And so you saw leaders, taking very bold steps with their colleagues and partners very early on as we moved to the digital world that is still enabling us to communicate here together today. And also, and I think we'll talk a little bit about this, leaders that were great, and I think I want to use the word great because I think it has a very important connotation, um, had empathy, and they brought in the human element of concern that every individual has, fear, anxiety, but also this commitment that we couldn't be immobilized. We had to do things together and act in what we were facing. So the glue that kind of holds together a leader's responsibilities and execution of those responsibilities with his or her team and partners in both the core environment, but then extending into multiple dimensions, is trust. And trust is built on honesty, it's built on values, it's built on principles, and all of those really core essence of being a human being came to the fore when leaders understood what they had to do with their partners and colleagues and acted.
Thank you for this insights, Deborah. And you were mentioning the leaders that actually created the content for this book, right? So maybe what I could do is briefly share with colleagues who are here with us today. And thank you, Jay, our friend Jay Hamilton just made a comment seeing that he likes the broadcast here. Thanks for being here, Jay. But if any of you is online, feel free to share your comments or questions. We will have a few questions for you too. But as you said, Deborah, we started this in face of uncertainty. And it was almost a year ago. It was May the 6th when we had the first online conversation, Now Bridge and Reboot, with this notion that we are facing an unprecedented time with lots of question marks. So how do we deal with it now? But also how we can look toward the future and how could we reboot not just societies and economies, but organizations, the way we see and do things, and what would be needed to bridge those two perspectives. We had 9 of those dialogues in 2020, starting, as I said, on May the 6th, right? And we were joined by leaders from several countries. We had the chairman of the board of Royal Dutch Shell, our chairman, Chad Holliday. We had entrepreneurs. We had working on the ground, someone like Regina, who's building a venture fund in Kenya. So different perspectives really coming out of this conversation. The book that we got here, that we are launching here today, and for those who are watching, please, you can check the event description, see our broadcast here. You can go there and download the book. We have 33 papers, 33 authors coming from 21 different countries. And really addressing this thing about leadership that Deborah was talking about. What I'll quickly do is, if that's okay, Deborah, maybe just mention the names of the authors here in the countries where they come from, just to recognize them. What do you think?
That would be great because, I hope maybe some of them I'm not seeing this moment are with us, but it is and was a fantastic group of leaders who are in our GFCC community. And not only did they share their own personal circumstances of where they were in the world and what they were dealing with, they really gave us tremendous insight into how to shape and design and build this new future, as opposed to just going back to the past. So let me just kind of do it alphabetically, if I may.
Okay.
And the countries from where our colleagues were. Elder Abrazadov, he's from Kazakhstan, the head of their Competitiveness Council. Rashid Abdul Karim Al-Boshi, who's the Undersecretary of Economic Development in Abu Dhabi, the Secretary of Competitiveness in Oman, Saif Al-Hidab. You, of course, Roberto, Executive Director of the GFCC. Simos Anastonopoulos, the President of the relatively new Greek Council on Competitiveness. Bill Bonet, a member of the GFCC and an authority on sustainability and climate. My colleague at the U.S. Council, Chad Evans, the Executive Vice President, who's leading our National Innovation Commission. Colin Grant, a distinguished professor and leader at Queen Mary University. Peter Gross, the president of the Okinawa Institute of Technology, and a colleague of his, Sabine Zimmerman. Jacqueline Guerra Akem, one of the leaders at Monterey Tech. Michi Hamaguchi, the president of the Japan Science and Technology Agency, one of our distinguished fellows, Professor Zachary Abdul Hamid from Malaysia. You mentioned our chairman, Chad Holliday, chairman of Royal Dutch Shell. Alexander Idrisov from Russia, the head of the Eurasia Group. Dylan Jones, who's the deputy minister of Canada out in the western part of the country and a tremendous colleague as well. Ashwin Kumar, a distinguished former judge in India. Taishi Kwan from Korea, former minister of finance. Paul Levins, a very distinguished consultant in his organization. Joan McNaughton, one of our distinguished fellows, who is a leader of the Global Energy Association and a tremendous leader in climate. Christos Megalou, the CEO and president of the Piraeus Bank in Greece. Jim Metzen, a leader and professor at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. Jan Medek, the former prime minister of Czechoslovakia. Hiro Nishiguchi, one of our board members, the president and CEO of the Japan Innovation Network. Regina Nijima is the wonderful young entrepreneur leader from Kenya that you mentioned, Roberto. Gianna Sagazio, who's the director of innovation at the Confederation of Industry in Brazil. Laurie Schmidt, formerly the head of Go Productivity in Canada and now distinguished fellow of the council. Jack Sim in Singapore, famous for his World Toilet Organization, who is a distinguished fellow. Rogério Studart from Brazil and the United States, also a distinguished fellow and leader in infrastructure finance. Alexander Subic, a president of one of the distinguished universities in Australia. And Ahmed Tajuddin Ali, chairman of the Australian MITE High Industry Group, as well as Kande Yumkela, a distinguished fellow and former director of UNIDO in the United Nations. So it is a fantastic group of leaders that participated and whose insights and real roadmap for the future are captured in this new GFCC publication.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Deborah. And thanks for the colleagues who are online here with us. I see our colleague Cyril Vasquez from Sweden joining us. I see Rick Parker. Thanks for being here, Rick, one of our distinguished fellows. Rick just recently made for the GFCC community an amazing presentation on the hydrogen economy. Thanks for being here. Other colleagues, Gilberto, my friend from Brazil. Selena, I'm glad you were able to download the book. And for all of those joining us, please check the information. My colleague Simone Mello has shared online the link for you to download the presentation. I see Gianna Sagazio here. Gianna, great to have you here. Amazing piece. Congratulations for what you have been doing, being a Brazilian. Thank you so much for doing lots of things to drive innovation in Brazil. Very quickly here, just to remind everybody, we have contributions, as Deborah said, from Australia, Brazil, Canada, the Czech Republic, Germany, Greece, India, Japan, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Oman, Russia, Sierra Leone, Singapore, South Korea, the UAE, UK, and the United States. And we invite all of you to download, to share the content, to get in contact with us if you have any ideas or comments. Deborah, one question that, so I really want to invite everybody, if they have any issues, questions, ideas about leadership, about the transformation we're going through. But I want to pose another question to you. What have you learned? You have seen different moments of growth of in the world, different situations. You have led different organizations. What did you learn from those leaders during the conversation series that we had, and that maybe people can find some ideas in the book that we're launching today?
I think overall, what I learned that was most impactful for me, both as a leader of the GFCC and the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, but also as a human being, is that individuals who, through their life's work, through their opportunities, through their perseverance and performance, are people that I would call builders. They are individuals who, yes, they respond to crisis. They do what is right and proper to really understand what's going on to the best that they can. But they don't allow whatever the circumstances is to immobilize them and to really take away their ability to act in concert with their colleagues in their community. So leadership is about the striving, the commitment, and the capacity to be a builder and not operate in an environment in which you block the reality that's occurring and you block the ability to respond and move forward. And that's why this triumvirate of innovation, of resiliency, and sustainability really become the tripartite system for moving into the future. And I want to say that, you know, resiliency, and we had some fantastic sessions on this, really, of course, enables any organization, individual to respond and be able to react in a not a defeating, but in a building way to take one into the future. But sustainability needs to really be writ large here. We're not just talking about sustainability in the environmental context, although, of course, this pandemic proved that that's more important than ever. As one of our distinguished fellows, Professor Zachary Hamid, you know, talked about how we are at a war with nature and that we have to, as human beings and communities and cities and nations, do a better job in returning to how we live and coexist with nature. But sustainability in terms of communities and the issues, you know, that emerged so much during the pandemic across the world around equity, inclusion, diversity, how everyone needs to participate and have the opportunities to thrive and grow. I think that is one of the really powerful leadership and new realities that merged into the world coming out and during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the other, you know, real learning for me was I've often over many years not heard, you know, business leaders, whether they are in government or business or academia, talk about values, about ethics, about principles, the way those, again, a triumvirate of intangible essences of our humanity came to the fore so much in their leadership, you know, and however that was being manifested. And yes, you know, their cultural norms and cultural sensitivity that is always essential for in any response and leadership environment, but also what emerged through our discussions and in the reality of the pandemic are the universal values and principles and ethics that we have to deploy together in order to navigate to the new future that we're co-creating and building together. So leadership is about the drive, the commitment, and the capacity to build, but it's also in the context of communication, collaboration, and really co-creation. It is a multi-participant activity.
And some of those co-creators are here with us, Deborah. I know that Rogeri Studer, who I learned is traveling. What's amazing, I think, after a long time. Thank you so much, Rogerio, for being on the road and being here with us. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on the white swan, as like your thought piece. Also, we have Simos Anastasopoulos from Greece, one of the leading authors that we had, sharing his perspective on change. You and I, Deborah, had a chance to be in a session with Greek leaders, including Simos, a week ago, and we heard about firsthand some of the transformations that are happening at the policy level and how they connect with business in Greece. So it's wonderful to have you here, Simos.
And very soon we'll be all participating in the Delphi Economic Forum as well, and have a great discussion therein on competitiveness, strategy, and leadership.
Exactly. I also see in Ken Kumba here. In Ken, we're talking Africa. You mentioned one of the authors that we have is Kande Yunkela, the former Secretary General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, is one of the authors here in Leading Through the Chasm and Into the Future Economy. We just had a session like 2 weeks ago with Kande. We're very deep interested in Africa. Thanks for being here, in Ken. I just want you to say two things. One, your comment on builders, Deborah, I very much like that. And maybe two things that I learned. One is that people, even like the chairman, the CEO of a big company, we have those 4 segments in the GFCC. We have members that are universities coming from 15 countries. We have corporations. We have government agencies like Japan Science and Technology as the government of Canada. And we have private sector entities, industry chambers, and like 4 different segments. One thing that I learned is that everybody is concerned about the future in a way that it seems different to me, as you said. So I think that's very interesting. And the other thing is that there's a certain flavor about those concerns, things that you mentioned, resiliency, sustainability in a very broad way. I want, if colleagues here, if they have any comments or ideas, we would love to hear from you. I want to ask you something else, Deborah, but maybe if you were attending this session, there are 2 questions we would like to pose and hear your comments here, or read your comments. Where do we stand? Where do you stand in terms of crossing the chasm now? And what have you learned recently from this whole situation? Shimada-san, great to have you here, one of the leaders from Japan Science and Technology who has been working with us. And for GFCC members, we just confirmed yesterday, Deborah, that Shimada-san is presenting about the future of science technology, the future science and technology plan in Japan during the upcoming GFCC monthly call. But Deborah, maybe something else before we're approaching the end of this. Is just a quick session to invite people. But you mentioned several things, but maybe what are some of the surprises that you had? Some of the new ideas that you saw emerging during our conversation that you would like to highlight?
Well, one, I guess, and I do think it's a surprise, but in a way it was not surprising, and that was how quickly we moved into the digital world. Things that we had talked about and predicted for many years, in terms of remote work and telemedicine and all the harnessing of the power of the next wave of digitization. really happened in warp speed. And very, very quickly, you know, people worked remotely. And yes, you know, there is some burnout from remote work in terms of the constant engagement on video screens, but also enhanced productivity. And so that was something that, you know, was both surprising and rewarding. You know, I do think the challenges around this for children and how they learn is something very serious. But on the other hand, you know, children throughout the world were connected in a way to enable them to learn that had never occurred before, irrespective, you know, of the physical quality of the environment in which they learn. So I think, you know, what will be very interesting going forward is to see how we operate in a hybrid world. Human beings, just by nature of being human, we do need physical engagement and interaction with each other. And so I think that, you know, the recognition by leaders, and I mentioned this before, leaders in their organizations and wherever they're operating recognized and understood that there was anxiety, yes, about the pandemic, but also the work-life balance, you know, of parents who are at home trying to work with their children in online education while, you know, executing their professional responsibilities and worried about food and shopping and all the things, the exigencies of life. So, you know, the empathy again that is extended to everyone, and very much so the essential workers who risked themselves and their families to go out into a dangerous world to enable us, many of us who were at home, to survive. So those were both, you know, I guess some surprises, but also very heartening, to see how, you know, the values of volunteerism and helping neighbors and friends and colleagues and being understanding really came to the fore, and also trusting people to act as well. You know, I think the command and control, you know, old fashioned management system is gone forever, and leaders, you know, recognize that within their constellation they're talented creative people, and they had to be given the space and the opportunity, yes, to perform, but also to come up with the very creative ideas and strategies that have taken us to where we are now and moving into the future.
And you talked about education in a broader sense, and for sure, even the need, something that you have highlighted, the need for infrastructure to include people in the digital world and in this new economy. And we have our colleague Joaquin Guerra from Mexico here, one of the authors, vice president for the Tecnológico de Monterrey. Great to have you here, Joaquin. And I remember the session when you spoke and your piece that really highlights, I think, some of the aspects that Deborah has commented about leadership, that it's about driving the future, doing that. We need leaders who do that and who create this new reality. Thank you, Olga, our member from Ukraine.
Our
Great to have you here. Our new member, our new university member from Ukraine. If you are in attendance, you are not a member of the GFCC, we would love to have you in our community. Deborah, as we close this session, what's next? What's up for the future in terms of the things that you are seeing, but also in the GFCC as we have new things coming up?
Well, let me just first say, for the GFCC, we have a very, very rich, dynamic set of programs moving forward that will culminate later this year when we have our big 10th anniversary virtual innovation summit that will be kind of taking us back to looking back to where we started 10 years ago, what we've accomplished, but really focused on the future and to engage our community and really generate the learnings, the thought leadership, and where we see this future going. We are launching very soon a fantastic series of discussions on Frame the Future, and we hope, you know, that all of you will participate in these curated series of discussions. And Roberto, you might comment on that before we close. I also want to say that I really want to emphasize that we are now living in a new age. And the COVID-19 pandemic has just accelerated tenfold our entry into that age. And that's the age of innovation. And it's an age in which all of us as individuals have a role, responsibility, and a right to participate in and contribute. And so I'll just share, in the United States, one issue that's very, very important to the U.S. Council, and it's important to all of our nations and partners at the GFCC, is that we have to really work hard together to unleash the potential for all our citizens to be part of the innovation future. And in the United States, that means that we need to work for inclusion and diversity in the innovation capacity throughout our nation. It's no longer acceptable in our country to have the Silicon Valleys, the East Coast, and these certain hubs of innovation, and the rest of the country sort of not participating in that. And so we're working very, very hard on both understanding and transforming all the regional components of our nation to be part of the innovation future, shaping it, creating it, and having the skills and the capacity to succeed and thrive in this digital future. And so that is something that we extend into the GFCC, where all nations really have the responsibility and the right to be in the innovation age with their citizens and the children coming forward.
Thank you, Deborah. Tom, you mentioned our future plans. I think 2 quick comments. I know that some of our university members we already mentioned and are here today. This week and next week, I'm interviewing Professor James Matson from Auckland, Professor Colin Grant from Queen Mary University London, and Professor Alex Subich, who have created 3 discussion papers on the future of universities. Jim and Colin are also authors here, leading through the chasm and into the future economy. I'm sure that some of the ideas are connected. So to all of you, please download this, share your comments with us. Deborah mentioned our new conversation series. On June the 16th, we will kickstart Frame the Future. We will look at the future competitiveness strategies, innovation strategies, this perspective connecting policy, business, and technology that we've been working in the GFCC, considering 5 future-defining themes that actually you mentioned all those themes, Deborah: sustainability, resiliency, inclusiveness, innovation, and partnership. How can we work together? We hope the GFCC can be a platform for that. Take a note on the date. Be mindful about that. Check our social media channels. Join us to frame the future. A final word here, Deborah?
I just want to thank you, Roberto, for your leadership in framing our tremendous GFCC work and accomplishments last year that led to this fantastic compilation of thought leaders' insights into the future. I want to thank our colleagues also in the GFCC, Simone Mello, Vanessa Puerta, and all of you for how hard everybody has worked in a very exciting way, but also a challenging way. Roberto, you and Simone and Vanessa are in Brazil, and yet you're all over the world. So I want to thank you and congratulate you for all of your accomplishments as our executive director of the GFCC. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Deborah. You're very kind. I'm very happy to work with Simone and Vanessa. And you, Simone, you, where you are special, you made this happen. You put a lot of work. So thank you so much for working with all the authors. And thank you so much for making this happen. And thank you all who have joined the session. I hope you can download the book. You can share comments with us and ideas. We would be happy to explore connections with the things that you are doing. And above all, I hope that, as Deborah said, we could keep walking together. Join us on June 16th to frame the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.